Welcome, everyone, to The Delight in the Limelight. I'm Linda Uglow, a speaking confidence coach and author of the book, Delight in the Limelight, Overcome Your Fear of Being Seen and Realize Your Dreams. My mission is to help people feel comfortable, confident, and at ease when they speak, whether that's at meetings, on stage, or even on a podcast like this one. One of the most important aspects of speaking confidence is finding and knowing your voice, and especially when collaborating with others. And that's why I'm so excited for today's conversation with the co-hosts of the 5-Minute Career Hack podcast, Jamila Brown, Candice Hunt, and Alicia Wade, who have spent nearly a decade working together as a powerhouse team. And with 50 or 60 years of combined experience in corporate leadership, project management, HR, and mentorship, they know firsthand what it takes to elevate your voice in a collaborative environment. So, welcome to all of you. So, where I'd love to start off with is your podcast, because that's how I learned all about all of you. I was on with Jamila, and I just thought, what a cool thing that you co-host a podcast, all three of you together. And I want to know, like, what inspired you to start at, the three of you? Where did that come from?
Well, I could tell the part about the podcast, but I think Candace is better served to tell the part about how we came together as a business. So tell me which one you want, and we'll go with that.
Well, I think you're lobbying it over to Candace. So Candace,
Yeah,
Yeah.
take it away.
no, I love it. I always think of a statement I made to Alicia and Jamila earlier on that I think is fitting for what we're talking about today. I made a statement that I'm a walking module. And so we came together, as you talked about, because we started working together over 10 years ago in corporate America, working on the same team, obviously recognizing each other's power and value. Had, worked on separate teams after that, and did some consulting work. And one day I just called the both of them and said, "Hey, do you all want to do a master class?" Because of all the experience that we had, because we were walking modules, we have this ability to be able to take any subject and turn it into a module and bless people with our experiences, our words, and our insights. And so I thought it was fitting that we did a master class because I had witnessed others doing master classes, and just again considering our experience, and we decided to do it. I got a resounding yes from the both of them. And as we were preparing for the master class, and this is where I'll kick it over to Jamila here in a second, as we were preparing for the master class, she had this idea that, we need to make sure that we can keep this ongoing and get our insights and our value out to the world on a consistent basis. And so before we even did the master class, she sends us this link of an episode that she had recorded of her podcast, of our podcast. And it was the first episode applying and interviewing for 5-Minute Career Hack podcast. And since then, I think we're hitting 200 episodes this week. So we've gone from being walking modules, mentoring and coaching people in the corporate America space to now being able to deliver that value on a weekly basis on the 5-Minute Career Hack podcast. And Jamila can share a little bit more about, maybe a closet moment she had that said, we're doing this podcast.
Okay.
That's how it started.
What do before we do that, I'm curious, what do you mean by a walking module?
Yeah, no, that's a great question, because that's a statement that came to my head. Like, just a lot of things just come to our head and we're like saying it out of our mouths, right? So what I realized, because we spent time in execution mode in corporate America. So we were responsible for getting information, getting directives, and it was our responsibility to get thousands of people to execute something very quickly. So that means for us that we had to insert our skill and value of leadership, all the modules and leadership lessons that we had learned to get people to execute, in order for companies to make millions and billions of dollars. And so you add that up for 60 years of collective experience, we have tons of leadership lessons, insights, modules, decks, you name it, it's all in our brains. And we wanted to, and when I say we're a walking module, we've got tons of modules in our brains that we deliver on our podcast.
Got it. Got it. And so that perhaps is why it got named the 5-minute career hack, because you thought you could deliver a module in 5 minutes. Is that it, Jamila?
So to Candice's point, once she reached out and we did the masterclass, maybe a couple of days before we were set to do it, it kind of got this idea that we probably need a podcast. And so literally the night of the masterclass, we're literally, we're operators. All three of us spent the bulk of our career in retail. So we know how to execute in tight timelines. So we're focused on the masterclass. And I decide to dump this on them almost right before we go live, right? With this very first masterclass, I tell them, hey, I recorded the first episode for our podcast and we're launching a podcast on Monday. That's literally how it went. And that's where it started. But I think the concept for the 5-minute career hack came from the years and years of education and continuing education, training that we got in the corporate space that we still get to some degree. But most of those sessions were week-long sessions, day-long sessions, just countless time spent learning and developing. However, because of the way it was packaged, you might take 1% away if you remember any of it and apply it long term. But it was also very focused on developing you for that company as an asset versus just being focused on you. So how could we create content development for the individual, for their growth and development that they can consume on a consistent basis, whether that's in their commute on the drive or, at home when they're cooking dinner with their kids or what have you, that wasn't that 8-hour session with a 30-minute break. Let's jam as much as we can into a day.
Yeah. And in a way that then you come out of it not having anything. So the idea of that less is more.
Yes, absolutely.
And I also love the perspective of let it be for you and wherever you go, not just, you for this particular situation or company that you happen to be in right now. Like you want to build your skills. Well, we are always building our skills. So we take our skills where we go, but having that in mind and forefront. Yeah. So Alicia, what would you say, how you each found your voice inside this podcast structure?
Yeah, I think what I'll start with, what is important when you work with people is knowing what your role is on the team. And I would say that's probably why I signed up to work with these ladies, because I saw them do that in a myriad of spaces. And I always say if someone is seen as a team player or people talk about them, or someone having value, people probably are going to list many things that they're really good at. Right. So if I asked, hey, someone that worked with Linda here, they'll probably have something. You're like, oh, I didn't really see that as a top strength, but because of how you showed up on that team. So I say that to say, like, that's important for you finding your voice, because it's really seasonal, I think, in this space. So I think what Jamila is excited about and passionate about in this season has a lot to do with different journey that she's on. Same with Candice, same for myself. So I say, like, where we are, I'm a mother of a teenage child that is, taking the SAT or things like that. So that's important of how I'm balancing motherhood and working and traveling and commuting. Jamila recently taken on coaching. Candice, a very small children, and like finding their voices as entrepreneurs and all the things that they're doing. And those are like, what I would say has been fluid. Like, so it's changed. And where we started with this and when we work together day to day is very different. I think we're still the same people, but seeing our interests. So I say that to say, like, your voice evolves. So if anybody is looking at this and really trying to say, okay, hey, how do I find my voice? I think it starts with giving yourself freedom to say, in this space, it may sound different. And I'm okay as I enter this space that it may be different as we continue to evolve as humans and have a real human experience.
I so appreciate what you're saying there, because it's true that we play different roles in different parts of our lives, and that changes at different times. I mean, even whether, let's say you're in a company and you have one role, but then you get a new position and then it shifts, and what is expected and how you contribute is going to change as well. I mean, it's the same thing in motherhood. As far as I can tell, I have a 29-year-old, so I've been through different stages, and our roles in, as a parent is going to change as well.
Yeah, that's such a great point. And just to follow up on what Alicia said, it was the main ingredient as to why I was interested. Right when she said yes, it was was because I was going to be able to pursue and continue to do some of the things that interest me, but also have the support of knowing these two from the workplace and how they operate with a spirit of excellence, right?
Yeah.
So that they would be a great representation, and I would hold the responsibility of being a great representation for them as well. Never concerned about it, never have to think twice about it, but at the same time, get to still be my individual self, knowing I have a collective to rely on any given day.
Yeah. So how did you at the beginning decide what roles you were going to play? Who wants to take that one?
I guess I could take that as well. They've evolved. As Alicia said, it continues to evolve. But I think the most important thing is because we didn't want this to necessarily feel like what we experienced in the workplace, we do what we enjoy doing. Right. Now, there are things that, of course, we still have to get done that we don't all the way enjoy, that we, parcel out, we support each other on. But for the most part, we're doing what we enjoy and what we're passionate about. And that's what makes this work so well for us. I believe God truly blessed us with this collective because we are all three very unique, different individuals. Our passions are totally different, but our common thread and how we execute and operate is the same.
So what is it that you love the most in this, Jamila?
I enjoy the creative process, primarily because that's, part of this part is weaved into my DNA, having a creative as a parent. And so that's the part that I enjoy the most. So I do all of our production, editing, and content creation for our podcast as well as our coaching and speaking engagements.
All right. And what about you, Alicia?
What I really enjoy is like connecting people. I can't tell you how many times in a workplace I've seen people take years and years to get a lesson, or they had access to something and they just, I don't want to use the word fumbled it, but it just lost upon them that they were like literally one call or a text or a coffee chat away from someone. So I really enjoy seeing that of like these two people you got to meet, right? Or hey, we have something in this organization and maybe you could use. So sometimes that means us coming to an organization and helping them or providing content for it. And sometimes it may be passing this along. So we've met a lot of people, but I really enjoy that piece and it looks different ways. I think in this season, it's like, okay, hey, what are some contracts? So I'm usually a person that's like, okay, look, we need to make some money. I'm finding this person, I'm getting this secure because you can find yourself in work that fulfills you that's not necessarily paying. And, and I think that's been something that we've learned. Like we can spend all day posting and retweeting and doing all those things, but is that money generating? So those are things I think that the human side of it connecting and really having impact. And the other piece of like what's gratifying for me is when that equals us getting paid, because ultimately this should be something that provides us another channel and avenues if we choose to do so as we move forward. So those are two things that have been constant for me that are very motivating.
Wow. Wow. That's so great to have, someone on the team who's in the back end doing all that creative stuff, someone on the front end who's forward, outward reaching. Okay, Candice, what's your role?
Yeah,
What do you love about it? What are you following?
yeah, I would say I'm at an intersection of like forward facing visionary and back end operations. So just as we started, when I said, "Hey, do you want to do a master class?" I've probably done that about 10 plus more times of some ideas that we've done, some things that we've executed at 5 Minute Career Hack, but also because of my operational background and the way that I love systems and processes. I can operationalize anything, even a conversation that I'm having with somebody. I'm going to turn it into a process, right? And so
Whoa.
I'm afforded an opportunity to do that here at 5 Minute Career Hack. And to your earlier question too, around the collaborative environment, I think for me, that turning point of being able to own and just be able to even articulate that this is where I am. When I first reached out to Alicia and Jamila, these were two ladies that I admired and served as mentors for me when I was in a workspace. And so as we embarked on this journey, there was a sense of, okay, I want to level up so I can be alongside and with them. But as my confidence grew and I started to see it less of, I want to be like Jamila and Alicia, but I also add value to that space. I'll say that's helped me grow inside the 5 Minute Career on the 5 Minute Career Hack platform, and then made this more collaborative over maybe the competition that could have existed in my head of me trying to, mirror or mimic my mentors.
Yeah, because it seems like it's kind of like I see you like a Venn diagram. That you each have your own roles, but you also, have this place because you all do interviews, right? You're all, have a voice on the podcast. I'm curious, did you ever have issues where you disagreed on things, and how did you handle that?
I can probably take this one. I would say, because I was actually thinking about this, because I think it's such an important thing to talk about when you're working, whether that's in teams, inside of a family unit, or what have you. And it right before we started, it was the word, one of my core values, respect, comes to mind. And because of our relationship in the workspace, this is nothing like that. I can tell you that was, in my opinion, utter chaos in our workspace where we work together. Absolute craziness, like the disrespect, the lack of loyalty, the integrity issues. I could list 100. One day we're going to write a book about it, but that's not this. But however, in that space, we learned about each other in those moments from an integrity standpoint and a respect standpoint. And we've always had that for one another. And that's at the core. So for me to say, have we ever gotten, no, we haven't actually, ever. And I think it's because of that time in that space. Now, I always share this because I think it's such an interesting part of our dynamic. Most people, when I was in the workspace, especially with them, they thought I was absolutely crazy, like off my rocker, because I would get into these instances. I'm going to call them debates. Alicia would probably call them something else because she was privy to some of those conversations firsthand in the room. But in those instances, we were able to learn about one another and how we respond and how we respect situations and what our values are. And so because we learned that in a high pressure, high intense, $1 billion under management, thousands of people under our leadership, high stakes environment, sometimes even life or death, to be honest, we learned about how we respond in those situations. And that just carried forward to the 5 Minute Career Hack. So I'm pleased to say, I don't know if that'll always be the case, but I'm pleased to say because of the respect and what we learned previously, that's never been the case.
Yeah, and Linda, if I can add as well, I think I totally agree with Jamila. I think also what I respect about this relationship and what I would say specifically around collaborating is I think what's really important, not only like those foundational things that Jamila said, but I think when you think about radical candor, I feel very confident being myself all the time. And if that's a dumb idea, or I don't think we should do that I can say that knowing that Candice knows I'm not calling her dumb. I'm not telling Jamila that that's a stupid idea that she had. That is how I'm experiencing this right now based on my lens. And not that obviously I have more words to use than that, right? But if that's the emotion that was coming up of like, I don't think we should spend our time that way. Yes, we have had disagreements in that way of like, I don't think we should be spending time here, or I don't think we should spend money there. But I don't see it as a disagreement or, conflict in a negative way. But there is conflict in regards to I have an opinion, but I think we all have a value of if we agreed all the time, then it would be no point of the three of us working together. And that's what I value is that the way I would go about it would be very different. And I think the consistent thing that we all have is that we gravitate towards people. And what I respected for them in the workplace when we worked together was we would gravitate towards people that were very different than us. And maybe we had to, right? But just by the nature of being the only in a lot of spaces that we were in. But this was a skill that I would say that was just always there and has been brought forward in this relationship.
Well, that's kind of fascinating because I think that most people would tend to gravitate towards the people that they felt most familiar with, that were most like them. So the idea that you gravitate willingly, consciously, intentionally towards others is quite mature, mind-blowing, different, unique. I think it's very special.
Yeah, I'll chime in there too because I think it's not comfortable, right? It's not comfortable to always be around people who you either think are better than you or have a different skill set. But I think what we've been able to realize, and just kind of that being our nature of gravitating towards people who are different, is that it's very uncomfortable, but that's where we grow. And so I've grown immensely being on this team because, like I said, these were former mentors of mine. So I've grown a lot because I'm learning. I'm learning from Jamila on the creative side. I'm learning from Alicia on the sales tactic side. So we have different strengths, but we're all very, very comfortable being uncomfortable, which is why I think that, again, we're about to reach 200 episodes on the podcast. Like, we've been able to see the levels of success that we have because we embrace that discomfort.
Yeah, yeah. So this is a great segue into, like, what do you feel like, or what do you wish that companies in corporate America would do from what you've learned as a podcast team? And what have you, conversely, what lessons from corporate leadership do you think? I mean, it sounds like you've just described one of the things that has helped you communicate better as a team. Your ability to kind of reach out and connect with people who have other skills. What would you like to see happen in the reverse, like from what you've learned as a team together, that you would like to see happen in companies?
So I'll start. For me, the thing that I've heard us kind of talk about to this point, even here on your podcast today, is the ability to see one another. We were able to see one another, understand one another, learn about one another, see some of those core values that we appreciated in one another. But the only way we're able to see that is because we were able to create space for one another to be that. And I believe you get the best, the absolute best out of a person when they can be themselves. And those unique gifts that they possess are allowed to shine when they can be themselves. So if you want a productive team, if you want a team that's going to stick around, if you want a team that is going to gel and mesh well and be creative, innovative, see your blind spots, keep you out of traps, that to me that's the secret sauce, is to allow them to be themselves, right? And appreciate them being themselves and their unique gifts. And I think that's where you get the longevity. You get people wanting to stay in your environment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll add my wish. If there was a genie, that's what I'm picturing here. It's like I'm throwing some pennies in this thing. I guess what I would wish is I think where companies start is that they want to go grab this magnificent talent, whether that's on a campus, whether that's in a certain, pedigree that's come from a different, organization that's like, oh my gosh, if we had that here. And somewhere along the way that gets watered down, right? And I wouldn't say it's from an authenticity that, maybe people uh, aren't seeing it that way, because I think that's what Jamila is discussing. But I think as a leader, you have to be okay with not having control. And so, if a wish that I would have is that you went and you saw that, how along the way do you not get in the way? And what I mean by that is like you will be wowed by people if you just let them do their thing. Right. And obviously, there's guardrails, there's frameworks that you have to put in line. As operators, we know that there has to be systems so you can have repetitive results. But I think that's what I would have a wish for is, being okay with that this may not look how you thought it would. And I think that's the magic of, like you said, what I've learned here of like what I thought that this would look like this in whatever 2025, no, but committing to the process and giving people the freedom to show up and add that. I have found that people usually exceed beyond anything you could have imagined. So that would be my wish.
Yeah, and if I had to share a wish as well, just in what we're talking about at 5 Minute Career Hack, because to your point earlier too, this is a collaborative environment, but sometimes there's this pressure in the workplace to be the loudest voice, or we celebrate who the loudest voice is and who said the most who talked the most, right? And even as we're meeting with other organizations, we see that. But I think that's not what this is, right? It's not about who says the most, who recorded the most podcasts, who said the best, who had the best nugget in the workshop. It's just really honestly about making sure that you give space for people to provide meaningful impact, and create space to not just celebrate who was the loudest, but make them feel comfortable in whatever their nugget is or whatever they want to share. You celebrate the value of everyone that's in the room and on the team. So that would be my wish, is that we just made more space for the person who is not just the loudest. Because I was once that person who would only speak, and I would hide behind it a little bit, if I'm being completely honest. Of I don't always talk. I'm a processor, but when I speak, I'm going to say something loud, and I was hiding behind that. But the minute I embraced the confidence of when I speak, yes, it adds value, and I can speak up in a room with the loudest person. I can speak up in a room where people who have had, more experience than I have, I can still speak up in those environments as well, and that's celebrated.
I'm going to ask a little bit more about what advice you have for the person who may feel intimidated by, someone dominating the space. But I'm wondering, why is this happening? Why are certain people dominating the airtime, and what's not happening in leadership that should be happening or amongst team members?
I think a part of it, and I know Alicia and Jamila are going to chime in, I think it's still the same thing. That's what's celebrated. So people are going to do what is celebrated. When that person speaks up and they're really loud, and then the entire room goes to shake their heads, and then that person shrinks back because maybe their idea is completely different than the person who spoke up said. And so they don't want to say anything at all. And I think what we are uncomfortable with is, like, we're afraid of being wrong. So now that this person said that, everybody seems to agree. I have an opposing thought, but I'm scared to say it because I might be wrong. I think if we abandon the idea of we have to be right in the room, and we just want to get it right as a team, that opens up that space to, don't feel intimidated. I'm just willing to be wrong. I reserve the right to change my mind based off of what I said. And I'm just going to say it and use this as a learning moment. So I think if we embrace it that way, it'll be very helpful.
I really appreciate you saying that. I have a personal rant about our educational system, because I feel like in our school system, we learn that there's a right answer and a wrong answer, and you get graded the highest for having the quote unquote right answer that the teacher has in mind. And we get penalized for voicing anything that is other than. And I feel that all of us, whether we did really well in school or not very well in school, most all of us have educational trauma coming out of it, and particularly around this confusion about what it means to make mistakes, what mistakes are, or failures, or being wrong, or what other people are going to think, because we're so external validation has become our norm, rather than, oh, I am here to participate and share my perspective. That's my role. That's my role, is to speak my perspective. So I really appreciate that, you bringing that up as a leading cause.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Alicia and Jamila, as Candice said, you probably want to put in your 2 cents. So I want to give space for that.
Sure. Yeah, I'll share. I think, a part of I totally agree. I appreciate the conversation. I was kind of getting lost in it because I have a mother that's an educator, so it's like double, and a boomer. So thinking about her process and just having that at home as well. I was sitting there like, right, bracing this. But I think there's a natural piece that there's some people that just speak and then they process. Right. And I think a part of it, what I have learned, to answer your question of like why it happens, I think 2 things. I think one, listening, there's a lost art in listening. That's why I covet this space, right? Like, picked up some, listened to a few of your podcasts, being able to listen to my peers' podcasts, it hones your skill to listen, right? And then when you interview people, you have a perspective, you've lived a rich life, you have things, but you're holding back because, to your point, it's not about me chiming in and sharing. That's not why we're here. So I think that's one, right? Like there's a lost art in that. Listening is a leadership skill. It is a competency. It is something that should be cultivated and used daily. And then I think the second piece of like probably more on the person that's speaking or not, I think people get into the details they understand. And that's what I know to be true. And so when you see someone maybe passing the ball or excited about the loud person, it's because maybe I don't understand that and I can hide behind that or whatever it may be. But I think those are two reasons of why, in my experience, that I would say. Excuse me, but I'll pass it to Jamila. But that's just what I was thinking about of like why it's happening and probably why it continues.
And then they kind of took that approach of the environment, and I'm going to bring it to the individual. And I think it also peels back to what you mentioned, Linda. It's a confidence thing, right? If you've been conditioned, whether that's in education, home, or the workplace, if you've been conditioned, that has probably stunted your confidence to a degree, if not a large degree. And I was raised in an environment by two very bold and opinionated parents. I got a quadruple dose is what I feel like, because normally opposites attract. I don't know if that's the case in this part of my parents' personality, and I'm having this moment of recalling some of their heated debates as a result of that. But I got a double dose of it. So when I showed up, and the first thing when you asked the question that came to mind is we were all working with the company where we were having this conversation. I'm not even going to call it a debate. It was a conversation about some loss prevention tactics and things of that nature. And I had an opinion. Let's be clear. I had a very bold, contradictory opinion. And, I was by myself fighting for my life in the room because it was so opposite. But because of that upbringing experience and probably sports as well, my confidence allowed me to say what I needed to say and stand on it. As they say, I was standing on business and I really didn't care I had to say it because that's how I felt. I had a strong opinion. I had data to support it. So I think the conditioning and leads to, a lack of confidence as to why you might not say it as well if you're placed in the environment that everyone just spoke about.
Yes, for sure. And in fact, that's what my book is all about. Delight in the Limelight is looking at the root causes, the messages we received or the experiences that we had that led us to believe it's not safe to be the center of attention or to express ourselves the way we do. So yes, I'm totally with that. And I know that not everybody has, let's say, a coach like myself to help, root out those root causes and heal them. And yet they are able to succeed and move forward and expand in their professional lives. So what do you say, or what piece of advice do you say to someone struggling to find their voice in these environments where there is, a loud person dominating the space or who everybody is nodding at? How do you coach people? Let's say this was one of your podcasts.
I'll kick us off because I think Jamila did such a great job saying like what the difference maker is, and that's confidence. And I would challenge, because I like to speak a lot about confidence because I've been on my own journey with confidence. I think the other day Jamila said I was on Candyce 4.0, now version 2. Correct me if I'm wrong. So my confidence has grown, and I think it was because I've learned and challenged my definition of confidence. And so versus confidence being I show up and I'm just great at this, my confidence is my willingness to try. I'm always willing to try. I'm willing to get it wrong and then try again. And when I'm coaching people, the example that I like to use is the gentleman who created the sticky note. He was actually trying to create an adhesive in a competitive environment where glue was already a thing. So he was trying to create a strong adhesive and he failed and he tried again and he failed and he tried again. The adhesive wasn't strong enough. But what it created, because he had that confidence and that willingness to try, what it created was one of the most popular pieces of stationery that exists today, right? Because he was confident in his ability to keep trying again. And so that would be my feedback, is nobody just woke up and was able to speak in the room eloquently for the first time. They did it. Maybe you were like Jamila, who was around confident parents. Maybe you were like me, who had more meek parents. But I was just always willing to try. So you just got to always be willing to do that.
Yeah. What I also take in from that, to put a little spin, is that a lot of people feel like and I think this comes from school too, like the thing of being right, they want to feel like they're good. But it's not about like being impressive. We're not here to impress. We're here to serve, to participate in the conversation, to share our perspective so that we get a better sense of what could work for us and what could work for a team. But unless people are willing to play that role as, I'm here as a participant rather than I'm here to show how good I am, then that does change everything for the better, doesn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
does. Participation is key. I love that.
Yeah, and the thing that I would say is, I'd first ask the question, do you want to go fast or you want to go slow? Because it requires time, first and foremost. A ton of reflection, because I don't know how far back you may have to go to uproot whatever it is you may have to uproot, to till your soil and make sure it's clear of all the weeds so that something can grow from that. So do you want to go fast, or do you want to go slow? Because at this point, with the amount of coaching that we've done and the amount of clients that we've supported and organizations that we've supported, it's difficult to do it on your own, right? Unless you already have some built-in practices, you've already sought counseling for other things, and so you have some mechanisms and things that you can rely on to go through that process. It's tough. I'm not going to sit here and sugarcoat it. So do you want to go fast, or do you want to go slow? And if you want to go fast, you're going to want to get with Linda, or you're going to want to reach out to someone at the 5-minute career hack to walk through all of that stuff to get there faster. Now, if that's not where you are and you want to take your time, I always say start with journaling. Start with journaling. That's number one. Start with journaling your thoughts, whatever you're thinking, on a daily basis, morning and night if possible. And then you're going to find some themes when you're able to go back and reflect. So without going like deep dive, that to me is the secret sauce.
Yeah, and I guess what I would add to the conversation, I usually start with a lot of questions, because it's really important of that person's assessment, because we can look at people and say, hey, this is what I'm seeing, what's going on. So definitely align with my peers here around, like, that's where I would start. But I think a lot of clients and people now have a lot of words, right? And we talk about the state of mental health, and we have all of this access to counselors and things like that. And people have all these labels that it was like, that was only used to describe a moment or a feeling, not you as a person. So people are walking around under this guise or cloud of, I am imposter syndrome. I am this. And it's like, whoa, 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 like that's not a constant state, right? But to your point, if someone is experiencing that today, it starts, and we see it a lot with women, right? And I think it's important based on where we are currently, right? In Women's Health, Women's History Month, and we're celebrating achievement of women. Like I think it's a common concern, and that's why confidence is coming up in all the things we're saying here, and it's very common with women no matter what the upbringing is. But I would say it's just reframing that concept. And for me, I would say, like, who told you that? Like who said that? And getting to that. And so that's where a lot of my questions will come from, of really just trying to understand. So that would be the advice that I would give someone, and whether they, use the tools that you all have mentioned before. But that is usually one we have to impact, is that imposter syndrome. It's like people don't even think they belong, or whatever it may be, right? But that's a very common one that we see.
Yeah, that's a beautiful way of having people reflect in the moment, because oftentimes sometimes they will say, oh, it was, my father who I could never please. Nothing I ever did was enough. Or they might say, actually, no one's ever told me that. So why am I even saying this to myself? Yeah.
Yeah, can I chime in on that, because I love the thoughts that you all have all shared, and um, integrity is the word that's coming up in my mind, and even with Jamila mentioning journaling, have you ever like written in your journal and you're actually thinking about what the person who reads it is going to think? But I find it most effective when I'm writing in my journal and I'm getting these thoughts out about how I feel, is that it's just the unfiltered truth. So the difference between going fast and slow is how quickly you're willing to tell the truth about what the thing actually is that's holding you back. And the example for me that comes to mind is my fear. Now I'm a professional speaker and I love speaking. I'm great at it. I'm amazing at speaking, but I had a fear of it for a while. I didn't have high confidence there. And I was able, after some coaching, I think Jamila and I had a conversation to go back and find out, like, when did I get this fear of speaking? And it was actually somebody in the workplace telling me that I wasn't articulate enough. But I had to get to that quickly and admit to that, the truth that that happened. And then I had to decide right away, is that actually a fact? Or have I just been reacting to how that made me feel? And when you can get to the truth and then separate it as fact or feeling, then that gets you to that level of confidence a little quicker. So when Jamila says, do you want to go fast or slow? Like, add your integrity in there, whether it's you journaling or answering a question from your coach. It's got to be authentic integrity.
I'm really glad you clarified that, because I can imagine that some people listening to this would think, oh, going back, looking at those things is the slow route. But in fact, it's the opposite. That being able to be honest, being able to recognize the origins of this is actually what allows you to get over it more quickly, so you can get on to business, so you can get on to doing the speaking, the presentation, sharing your idea with the team, and even doing things on stage, presentations, because once you make that once you're no longer bound to these things in the past, which, as Jamila, you said, that make us feel like there's something wrong with us. I think, and it's not that. It's just the things that happen to us, and we are not those things. It's just our interpretation of what it means about us. When we are able to let those things go, it's like the world changes. The world looks different. The world feels different. So I want to ask you to close up. What are you working on in your own speaking? Like, what kind of level are you aware of that you are becoming more of yourselves, more dynamic, more whatever? I know I often tell my students to, like, pick something that they secretly want to do, that they will not be able to get that experience except when they're in front of somebody. Is it like getting comfortable looking at people's eyes? Or is it feeling relaxed in your body? Or is it becoming more concise in how you put your thoughts together? So what is it? I'd love to hear one thing from each of you of what is, your little growing edge.
Well,
Go
Jamila,
ahead.
Go ahead, Jamila. No, go ahead.
So I was going to say, the thing for me that I've been really extra focused on is the audience. And I don't mean just on a big stage. As I think someone mentioned, I coach basketball as well. So I'm around a lot of teenagers. So I'm consistently focused on how I'm connecting in my communication with the other individual. Because, like I said, I'm highly opinionated. You can put some other adjectives on that. I know myself, but at the same time, I want to understand how to connect with them, and also how they're receiving what I'm communicating, and how that might look from a stage or even virtually. There's some dynamics there, but that's the one thing: the connection and how they're emotionally connecting to me and or my message, and how that's making them feel. That's something that I'm highly focused on right now.
And I would say for me, it's a big yes, and because I'm focused on that as well. I think the thing that's standing tall for me right now, even in the podcast space, because again, 200 episodes, we have talked about a lot of things. And I can remember early in the journey, like, trying to always come up with new topics and new things to say. Can't record that because we already talked about that. And right now, I am holding space for repetition and finding the value in repetition. So there's probably not a panel, a stage, a podcast where you're not going to hear me talk about confidence, because that's my resounding message right now, is on this journey to confidence. And I'm okay being quoted, having the same quote for every single presentation, every single one, I'm okay with that now. And so that's what I would encourage the audience of: take the pressure off of always having to be the most innovative, and be where you are. Whatever your topic is, talk about that topic. Atomic Habits is a great example of that. Went around and talked about habits for years. And that's what he is known for, is habits. He has a book about it. And if he went to change his subject, we'd be like, what are you doing, James Clear? What's that about? Right? So just power and repetition, there's value there.
Yeah, I think probably two things for me as well. I'm a natural collector of things. Let me say that. So I don't know if you've heard the story, Linda, or your listeners and everybody checking out have heard the song "Bag Lady" by Erykah Badu. That's me and my soul. Like, it's like, bag lady, put them bags down. Like, you're gonna miss your bus. You're carrying all, and I just, like, they laugh at me because I'm a person. Like, you see me taking notes. Like, I'll be in podcasts, and this is what Jamila will hear in the back. All of these papers, you hear this? That's me. Like, I love it. So I say this to the person that's out there with their books and all of it, 1,000 tabs open. That's me. I have that in my mind. So I'm working on getting comfortable with, you have done the research. You do not need to look down and look at that paper. And I can go on for that in a minute, but I'll just put that there. The other piece would be storytelling. And similar to Candice, definitely resonates there. It's not necessarily from the innovative, but to your point, being confident in that. But for me, with the storytelling is, how do I feel comfortable when I'm showing up, sharing that? Because when I do, I think it resonates. So I'm really trying to put myself in spaces, because I share the why all day in my work, right? Like, I feel very comfortable sharing the vision, sharing benefits, sharing the why, but I don't, and I'm unpacking this for myself. This needs to be a therapy topic for me. Linda, I've heard how you coach people through these questions. You have some real powerful questions. I'm not an early knower. So I'm not a person that would just share everything. I share what's relevant for this conversation, and that impacts my storytelling. And that's what I want to work on in this season, of like, how I can get comfortable of like, this story will be, it'll resonate, or like just being okay with all the questions I have in my head, not compartmentalizing what could come across as very authentic and fresh and relevant in that moment. So those would be my two things that I'm working on. Probably learning to love, launch, and learn. I think it's probably fits in all three of those buckets for me in this season. And it may be all 2025, but that's what I want to work on in this season, particularly with the podcast and speaking.
Sounds wonderful, all of that. Well, this has been such an insightful discussion about finding your voice and collaboration in the corporate setting, on the podcast. And one of the things I'm most passionate about is helping people feel at home in their own voices. And if this conversation has resonated with you and you want to dive deeper into speaking confidence, you can check out my book, Delight in the Limelight, or visit my website to find free resources in helping you feel more comfortable, grounded, and confident when you speak. Or reach out to these ladies at the 5-Minute Career Hack podcast. So before we go, Jamila, Candice, and Alicia, where can people find you and your work?
5minutecareerhack.com and 5-Minute Career Hack wherever you stream podcasts. Watch us on YouTube as well. That's where you can find us. And we look forward to hearing from you on our most recent episode that we just released yesterday. Alicia was talking to Dr. Cartwright of the University of North Texas. It was an incredible conversation around co-conspirators. So check that out. It was released just on yesterday.
Well, thank you again for bringing your wisdom, insight, and wonderful presences. And for all you listening, wishing you delight in all your limelight moments.